I wanted to share my experience of long COVID because I felt that I had learnt quite a lot along the way, and I also felt it was very misunderstood and dismissed. So the more information that's out there, the better, I think. I was in Europe in March 2020 when the pandemic got really fired up, and I was actually in Morocco when I decided I needed to get back to New Zealand. I was home for 10 days before I got sick. I thought I'd totally missed the bullet, but I got very sick at that stage. I had COVID again in April 22. I haven't had a diagnosis as such of long COVID. I've had 2 positive PCR tests because there is no test for long COVID at this stage. But I've seen a couple of specialists in the last 3 months, and they've both said, "Oh, you've got long COVID." That's what this is saying to me. So it's good to know that there's more awareness and starting to be some understanding and acceptance that it is a thing. It was very isolated initially. I live alone, so I was quarantined at home during that initial illness, and because it was early in the pandemic, nobody really knew what to do. I had 4 ambulances in one day, but because I didn't require intubation, I was never actually admitted to a hospital. Then getting information or following up on my symptoms more. Initially I recovered from the acute COVID, so it was more like 2 to 3 months that things started feeling very, very wrong. I went through a period where I was actively looking at moving into more dependent care because I just couldn't believe the deterioration in my cognitive functions. So it was the neurological functions that affected me most and the fatigue, but you sort of get on with it. So it was about more like 9 or 10 months before I thought, I'm just going to stop everything. Nothing is working, and rest. So I rested for about 18 hours a day and didn't do very much in the other 6 hours a day. And I think that 6 weeks was quite a big turnaround for me. We knew we had to rest, but I didn't know really what resting was. I'd never given myself that amount of time before. And from there on, I started improving and gathering my fitness back over the next year, 15 months, and then I got COVID again. So that's all gone. From the second round of COVID, again I was PCR positive, and in the process of being managed by Waipareira. They insisted that I have a chest x-ray. When I saw the GP, she insisted that I went to North Shore for the x-ray because she said that's where you're going to end up. And that was where I first saw a respiratory physician 4 months later. He said, "Oh, you've got long COVID." I said, "What makes you think that?" And he said, "Well, you've got all these dysautonomia symptoms." And I said, "Oh, okay, so what are we going to do about that?" And he said, "Well, there's nothing we can do about it. I'm seeing lots of you and we don't know how we're going to manage you." So I had some lung testing, and because I was very short of breath and my heart rate was going up very high, with a small amount of exercise or doing something. And he said, "No, I'm happy with your lungs." And I said, "Well, why do you think my heart's going mad?" And he said, "Well, I'm not sure. Might be the vaccine, might have been myocarditis with the second lot. We'll just test. We'll just do this cardiac enzyme test." And that came back very high. So I'd actually been having small heart attacks So I've not been doing terribly much since then. And currently I'm just managed with medication and lifestyle, but nothing has turned up in the cardiac screens that I've had so far to say why. So I'm still waiting for an echocardiogram, which will be sometime in the next 12 to 14 months. That's the health system at the moment. So yes, different kind of journey, totally different impact from the second one, but takes you back into all that triggered stuff for friends, for family and for myself, so that hasn't been pleasant. I think it probably took me about 9 to 12 months to actually realise what an impact it had had at that point in the pandemic, that they couldn't come and help me, they couldn't be there for me, it was hard to advocate for me. They were very scared in that unknown space, as a lot of people who actually had COVID were as well. So for my children, looking at their mother's mortality was pretty tough and unexpected. Family responded just generally as people do. Some were very empathetic, others were, oh, well, you know, you're better now, aren't you? Was a favourite one for people who don't want you to be sick. And friends, I know I went through a stage where I didn't tell anybody I'd had COVID because it was just, have you? Months later. And I chose who I spent time with. I made quite a conscious decision. I'm just spending time with people who have a positive attitude around my recovery and are supporting that. So the wider public, there was a lot of stigma. There was discrimination, fear. I think fear was at the bottom of most of it. And then I guess as more people started getting sick, once the Delta variant was here, people started to know people who had made a good recovery really quickly. So I must be making it all up, which wasn't the case. It is very difficult when people don't understand or aren't willing to just let you be sick or unwell. It's like a little bit like having a mental illness or some other invisible disability. Oh, but you look fine. That's because I'm here and because I rested yesterday. That's why you're thinking that. I'm not fine. I'm not the person I used to be. So some close friends now are saying, but you know, you hadn't got back to where you were before you had COVID a second time. Whereas I thought I was making quite good progress. The brain stuff's still difficult, and it seems to be related to stress levels. You know, if I've got too much on, or I've been trying to do too much, or I haven't been sleeping well, then a lot of that executive processing function just goes away. It just becomes impossible, and I wonder where my keys are. I've got double sets of keys now because I can't be bothered looking for things. They'll turn up. They'll be in a place that's safe. But I don't think it's the same as the normal sort of cognitive degeneration that, I mean, I've been tested for dementia, Alzheimer's, that kind of thing, which I'm fortunate avoiding at the moment. I don't think it's the same sort of cognitive decline that occurs in the last sort of 3 or 4 decades of life. I think it's a different thing. Not being able to For example, not being able to follow a recipe. So you get everything out that you want to use, you put it all on one side, you have your making place and you take it over to the other side, but then you can't trust that you actually remembered to put it in between. That was really scary, just not being able to do the things I could automatically do, having to use a recipe, because I had no taste and smell for quite a long time, so the seasoning wasn't always very reliable. I had to measure things to put them in. So yeah, lots and lots and lots of changes. The sort of symptoms I've had, the main ones I had initially were just this absolutely, it was almost like being run over like a steamroller, and by a steamroller, and then being chloroformed. It was fatigue like I'd never had fatigue before, where I just couldn't even get out of my own way. And the brain fog or dysfunction. They were two major symptoms. I tried all sorts of things to improve my sleep so that my brain could clear and heal from the work it was trying to do. Some were more successful than others, but nothing was successful for a long time. I still have difficulty staying asleep. I can get to sleep quite readily, but staying asleep is difficult. And if you don't get enough rest, then you don't heal very well. I've had a lot of neurological symptoms like headaches, pins and needles in the feet, in the hands, odd sensory stuff, joint stuff. I think the longer I've had an association with this virus, the more it likes to run around my body and find places that I've damaged before, and we'll go and have a party there, kick that bit of fence down again. They'd be the main ones, and the one that I'm really conscious of at the moment is this heart damage. But I don't think there's any testing for endothelial inflammation, even though a lot of the research overseas is on it. I look forward to that coming. I don't know whether I've had microclots at all. It's quite an interesting topic around long COVID, but also around diabetes, around ME/CFS. There's nothing available in New Zealand, but it's microclotting that's going on in your system, possibly provoked by the inflammation in the lining of your blood vessels. So it's going everywhere. And the problem with it is that these microclots do not get resolved or reabsorbed. So they're just moving around. So it makes some sense of possibly why people have a wide range of symptoms in different parts of their bodies at different times. I haven't been tested for them. I don't know if that's what's going on. And recently I had a coronary artery scan. There's nothing there, but it wouldn't pick that up. It's a totally different kind of testing. It's required. The best strategies for me, and it was a hard one to learn, was to stop and rest, to accept that this is where I am right now, to find something in every day that gave me a sense of achievement or joy or connection, either to nature or to another human being. Dealing with the grief, because there's a huge amount of grief when you take a big decline in health that you weren't expecting. So dealing with that, so counselling, journaling, yeah, finding the social situation or the social support that really supports me. I regularly meet on Zoom and have done for the last 2 years with a group of people, which are really my whānau, I guess. They're the people who understand. They're the people who are having the same weird things happening to them as has happened to me. The groups here in New Zealand have been good, but they're online. There's not so much personal connection. And I've explored allopathic things, naturopathic things, osteopathic things. I think cranial osteopathy has been really helpful for keeping my brain cleared and drained. That's about it, really. Seems like I've been doing lots of things, but I've never had so many medications in the house in my whole life. And I've never had so many appointments with the medical system in my whole life. I've never spent a night in hospital my whole life, so going there regularly now for appointments is quite odd to me, although I worked in a hospital for a long time. There have been huge amounts of challenges having had COVID, but I have to say I am very blessed in that I don't have a financial stress. I haven't had to give up my paying job that was paying my mortgage and sell my house because I couldn't work. So I feel very blessed in that way. But it is a challenge. I was working prior to having COVID, and it's work that I can't pick up again readily. The biggest challenge really is for me has been the personal challenge of just refocusing about what's important to me in my life when you come quite close face to face with the end of your life. I think it's an opportunity to review what's important for me. How do I want to spend the time I've got today, this week, this month, this year? Which is a different way of being, really. The challenges with the existing medical system, they're just doing their best within the constraints that they've got. And when you've got a medical system that's set up in giving answers rather than having curiosity, then if you don't fit the box and they don't have the answer, it's quite a difficult place to be as a carer, to say, well, I'd like to be able to do something for you, but I just haven't got any options. So over time I've become more accepting of that. I'd still like it to change quickly, please, for all of us, but it won't. I know that. It could be another generation. I think the longer term challenge is the impact of COVID on society as a whole and all sorts of areas, but particularly on people's health long term, that we just don't know what that's going to be. So that's going to be a challenge, not so much for my generation, but certainly for the younger generations. I've tried self-treating myself with various supplements and on recommendations. I did quite a lot of liposomal vitamin therapy for quite a while. I think possibly that helped clearing the virus out of my body. At the moment, I'm on statins to try and reduce any plaque in my arteries. I don't have a high cholesterol, but that's the management, and a blood thinner. And I'm sort of having had several heart attacks from an unknown cause with unknown extent of damage. I'm reluctantly taking those. I'm not a big pill taker. I've tried sleeping pills, melatonin, magnesium, all the usual suspects, meditation, yoga, all those things to try and improve my sleep, to allow myself to really rest before I need to rest. Pacing's important. And whereas I was using, for an example, a spoon therapy, that you have a certain number of spoons of energy in a day, so choose what you're going to use them for. The number of spoons that you need to have a shower and get yourself dressed varies from day to day. So now I tend to prioritise what I want to do. So if I want to do something tomorrow, I'll save up my spoons today and make sure that the following day I'm not using a lot of spoons or a lot of energy for things. So it's managing my life so I'm getting to do what I want to do, rather than just surviving and existing. So yeah, no household admin unless I feel like doing 5 minutes, and then I'll do 5 minutes, but I'd much rather make a phone call or do something like that, connect with somebody. And hopefully soon I'll be able to go for a walk, because I can't do that at the moment either in this lovely weather. I was crashing quite regularly, and I thought, what am I not listening to here? So as weird as this sounds, my eyes get extremely irritated, and then the next thing that happens is that I'm not sleeping properly, and then I may have another disruption of smell. Then it tended to be the fatigue increased, the joint stuff increased, the gut stuff increased. So by the time I got down to the gut, I thought, yeah, it's too late now. You've just ignored all that. So I started to try and make some interventions for myself much earlier. So that's worked well. And just trusting and feeling comfortable saying, no. Yes, that sounds fine. I'd like to do that. I'll let you know on the day. And feeling quite comfortable with that. So it's fun. It's feeling that, feeling those first signs that my immune system is dropping, and taking heed of that. So my gums will bleed for no particular reason. My teeth get loose. Then they tighten up again. So my body is talking to me and saying, you've got to slow it down. You've got to do less. So learning to and accepting that I do has been useful for me. I haven't journaled a lot of my process. I've written lists when I've been to interact with somebody I thought might have more information than I have. I've got a background in pathology and immunology, so I went for a lot of the research initially, and still do follow it. I imagine if you don't have a medical background, it's difficult to advocate for yourself, and two, to understand the jargon of what comes back to you. Very, very hard. even, to read reports and that sort of thing. You become very, very reliant on your primary caregiver. So it depends very much on the relationship that you have there. I was quite lucky, I think, and there was an acknowledgement that you're just not well. This isn't who you are. There's something going on here and I can't do anything about it. So, yeah, I'm not a very good file keeper. You should see my photos on my computer. I know what I've been told, and most of what I've been told is, we're sorry, we can't do anything for you. We don't know how to manage this. But there's more and more validation that it is a real thing. So it may come back later. It's a 4-letter word, rest, is the message for people who think they might have long COVID. But I think it's most likely that many people with long COVID are just battling through. They may have made some adjustments in their life, but for whatever reason, and a lot of them are very necessary in terms of finances and that sort of thing, they're just putting up with that debilitating fatigue and just not being the smart on it person that they used to be. So if it's possible, let yourself recover. I hope that in the future there will be more and more earlier intervention, diagnosis and intervention. If I had a wish, it would be that in New Zealand we get very prepared for the next pandemic and we can manage it in a way that's less impactful for our communities, our families, our businesses, our health system. I think we did a good job, but I think we could do a whole lot better for the next one, and there will be another one.